Today we're going to start with endocrine system, the objectives. So what are the things that you need to learn from this presentation? So we're going to define hormones, and we're going to talk about the endocrine system. We're also going to describe the different ways of classifications, structures of these hormones. So we're going to talk about the different structures of the hormones and what do they do, and how is the main function of the body. And we're going to talk about the two general mechanisms of hormone action. There's actually more than that, okay? So that's what you need to get out of these things. All right, so let's begin. What is homeostasis? So for every interaction that you have between your body and the outside environment, which is always changing, you need to maintain things inside your body, right? And what are the things that you normally maintain inside the body? Guys, what do we maintain inside our body that we have to somehow the way keep constant? We got temperature. What's the temperature in the body? What's the temperature of the body? 30? 36? 37? 36.8? Okay, awesome. So pH? pH? Nobody knows the pH? Okay, it's really simple. If your temperature, you need to maintain it, and your pH, you need to maintain it, do you want to be acidic? No. You should know this from 285. So, your pH is it going to be what? What is a really acidic pH? What is a really basic pH? 14, right? Because that's the range. You should remember this from 25, guys. Shame on you. All right? So, do you want to be acidic or you want to be basic? You want to be in? There you go. She wants to be in homeostasis, so somewhere in the middle. So the middle is what? Around 7. Okay? So the actual 7 is 7.35 to 7.45. That is the actual average of the pH. So your blood pH, that's the average of it. Again, this is blood pH. You also need to maintain fluid balance. This is the amount of fluid inside your body, right? And then, of course, other things. So let's talk about temperature first. If it's really cold outside, what do? You put on some clothing, right? Or you decide if you want to shake your body, right? That is a way of doing what? Warming your body up, right? If you're too hot and you're overheating, what do? You sweat. Or you take a really cold bath, right? That would be the perfect thing to do. Or just get into an air conditioner. Something like that, right? So you tend to accommodate what? The regulation of body temperature to a homeostasis, right? If you're too hot within your body, then you're actually going to be melting your proteins and your enzymes and all these structures, right? And there's no physiological event that can take place on a boiling point, correct? If you want to eat something, where do you put it? You got to cook it, right? Or you got to boil it. So you don't want to eat your body, right? You just want to maintain a normal body temperature. If it's too cold, well, things can get too cold and to a point that you put it in the freezer and it becomes what? A popsicle. Would you want your blood and your fluids to become popsicles? No, because then you will die, right? No blood flow, no oxygen, right? So you will die. So that's maintenance of temperature. pH. If you eat things which has too much acid, what normally you do? Your body uses something that to break down the acid, correct? Remember, whatever you eat, and you eat of excess, or whatever you intake, and you intake of excess, what do? Do you keep it, or you get rid of it? You get rid of it. You make it into a waste product. So that means it's either urinating, or defecating, or vomiting, or just breathing it out. Does that make sense? So imagine a life, or a day, full of onions. Onion rings, onion salsas, onion this, onion that, right? At the end of the day, what do you smell like? Onion. But I just took a shower. But your breath smells like what? Oh, onions, right? Because your body's getting rid of this excess of onions. When you pee, I'm not talking about that, but normally that urine smell is going to change a little bit, right? And when you poop, I mean, hopefully you're not doing that with onions, but, all the excess of things, in other words, it needs to get rid of the body. When you sweat, you smell like what? Onions or paprika or whatever it is that you have to eat in excess, right? So it's just part of the body. So that's a way of controlling that. The next thing is fluid balance. If you drink too much water, what tends to happen? You pee a lot. And why is that? If you were to maintain all the water inside your body, part of that will go into your bloodstream, part of that will get into your interstitium, right? And you'll be like what? Bloated, right? Edematous, third spacing, that's what it's called. If you have too much blood into your bloodstream, then that leads to what? Increased blood pressure. Usually, that's what happens. Almost all the water that you intake, it goes into your bloodstream. So once it's in your bloodstream, you don't become hypertensive because your blood vessels are able to do what? Dilate, right? So as the blood reaches your kidney says, I got too much blood. What should I do? Make pee, and then you pee.
Diuretic.
Right? So it stimulates ADH, the first hormone, antidiuretic hormone. No, it actually inhibits it, right? Because now the first hormone that we're going to talk about, since you mentioned it, or the fluid balance, is ADH, antidiuretic hormone. So it says anti, right? So it's against peeing. Diuresis means peeing. So it's a hormone that prevents you from urinating. So when you have too much water in your system, do you stimulate or inhibit this hormone? So if you have high amounts of water in your system, what happens to the hormone? Stimulate or inhibit? If you stimulate, you retain all the water.
Oh, inhibit.
You inhibit the hormone. Does that make sense? So as a consequence or as a side effect, you increase what? Urination. Why are you doing this? Because this is anti. Anti means what? Now you're on against. Okay? Awesome. So that's maintenance of fluids. Plus, of course, other things that we're going to talk about. Okay? So a good homeostasis is indispensable to maintain what? A good balance, a good health. If balance is not kept, then functions will get damaged, and by damaging the function, we may end up with what? Or something that we call a pathology, right? Which is, pathology is the study of diseases, right? All right. So, and that is, of course, when, as a result of all these changes, there's a disturbance in the physiology or in the function of your body, destroying your homeostasis. All right? Okay. So, how do we going to communicate between our body? So, our body is made out of what? Or cells, tissues, organs, organ systems. Wow. And then organism, right? If there's any problem of communication in any of these levels, then we're going to end up with what? A disease, a pathology, correct? So how do we communicate? So there is something known as direct communication. So direct communication, this is actually allows for exchange of ions. And one of the specific structures in cell-to-cell communication that will be known as what? Gap junctions. So this one right here is an example of gap junctions. This occurs between two cells, right? And they're highly specialized. Okay. So what are some of the examples of those? Well, you have that in when there you have a ciliary movement. What do you have, cilia? Cilia, you have cilia in your what? Cilia are like the finger-like projections, right? So cilia is in your respiratory tract, right? It's also on your intestines, and it's also on your fallopian tubes, right? All right. So you also have coordinations and contractions of the cardiac muscle, and in the cardiac muscle, these gap junctions have another structure name, and that is known as what? Anybody? Collated discs. Discs. I keep putting it wrong. Whatever. So intercalated discs. So that's a direct communication. Now the next one that we have is a paracrine communication. So para means on the surrounding. So these are going to be hormones, right, or factors that are going to be secreted by cells, and they're going to work locally. So these paracrine factors are going to be through the extracellular fluid. So in other words, they're not going to go between one cell to the next, but from within the cell to the outside of the cell, extracellularly, and then into the other cell, right? So this is paracrine, and this is again in a local area. Again, it says primarily limited to a what? Local area. And normally, of course, it goes through the diffusion, which is what? From a high concentration to a what? To a low concentration. Okay? The next one, communication, is endocrine, and this is the most common communication, hence the name endocrine system, right? Endo means inside, crine means gland. So endocrine communication is pretty much release of chemicals, and these chemicals are known as what? Hormones. These hormones will be secreted. Any endocrine communication is secreted into what? Into the bloodstream. So whenever we're talking about any endocrine hormone, any endocrine communication, you assume almost all the time that is what? In the bloodstream. So whenever we're talking about a hormone, the hormone is going to go where? In the bloodstream. So it's going to be produced in tissue, whatever, and that's going to go into the bloodstream. Where? Whatever it needs to go through the whole body. That's something that you need to understand. All right? So, bloodstream means what? Well, in the whole circulatory system, right? The whole cardiovascular system. All right. Now, as this hormone travels through the whole circulatory system, what's going to happen? It's going to go all the way into what? A target cell or a target tissue, because cells build tissues, right? Within this target cell or tissue, you're going to have a specific what? What are these things called? Yes. So these things right here are known as cellular, and that's how I write receptors. Cellular receptors, because things bind to the top right here. Right? That's what you're seeing here. So in other words, every single chemical, in this case hormone, that you're releasing into the bloodstream is going to find the cell and it's going to find the tissue. And you're going to be asking me like, how does it find it? It doesn't. It travels down to the bloodstream, and whenever it finds a receptor, it just binds to it. It means sitting where it fits. Does that make sense?
Yes.
If it cannot fit, well, it cannot fit, right? If you have a hormone that is, I don't know, 1,000 pounds, do you think she'll be able to get through the door? Most likely not. Or can it sit in a chair? No, most likely not. So it's all about binding to the proper receptor. So that means that every single tissue or cell is going to have a specific type of what? Receptors. One or a combination of many. And that's why when you take a medication, for example, you take, I don't know, acetaminophen, right? You guys know what acetaminophen is? Right. One of the side effects of acetaminophen, or well, one of the effects is an antipyretic, means it lowers your temperature, right? It is anti-inflammatory, so it lowers your inflammation. And it also, side effect, it increases your bleeding time, because you're gonna make you bleed longer time. But the other side effect is that when you take too much of it, it actually binds the receptors, this molecule binds to the liver, and the liver processes it, and it damages your liver. In the long run, you can actually end up as a liver failure or renal failure. I mean, if you take too much of it. Does that make sense? So you have effects of a medication, and you also have what? Side effects. And the reason why you have side effects is because those cell receptors are found on other tissues. Does that make sense? Now, the next one and the last one is going to be synaptic communication. Why synaptic? Well, if you look at this one, I don't have to say a lot. I just tell you that it involves a what? A neuron, right? So this is a purely fast one, right? Because neurons are the fastest thing on the actual human body, right? Hopefully. So the neurons are going to be releasing what? Neurotransmitters. So it happens at the level of what? This area here is called what? A synapse, right? So that's why we call it synaptic communication. So a synaptic communication requires neurotransmitters, okay? So it's very close to the target cells and effects on neural stimulation. So fast, but at the same time is how long does it take to stay within the area? Short-lived. If you send a hormone, you build a hormone, the hormone has to go, I don't know, from your brain all the way to your toe. It's going to take a long time for the hormone to do what? Disintegrate, right? The life of the hormone, we call it half-life. And that's a molecule, half-life. That means it's the time that it's able to do 50% of its function. On the synaptic communication, it's fast, but as fast as it is, it actually takes time, only a short period of time, so it disintegrates right afterwards. Okay? So what is the difference between a what? Nervous and endocrine system. The nervous system does what? Well, both electrical and chemical. Because if you think about it, on the neural communication we talked about on 2085, well, they talked to you about acetylcholine or norepinephrine, right? Acetylcholine is a neurotransmitter, but epinephrine is a neurotransmitter too. But epinephrine is also what? A hormone. What? How can you be a neurotransmitter and a hormone at the same time? Simple. Hormones, they are where? On the endocrine system. Where are they found? What portion in the endocrine system are hormones found? What do we said the main location of all the hormones should be? Blood. So epinephrine, adrenaline, noradrenaline are all the same, similar structures, at least the way they behave in the body or the effects that they produce. They are all floating in your bloodstream. A neurotransmitter is that it's only found where? Between the neurons. So epinephrine or adrenaline is able to work both ways, as a neurotransmitter or as a hormone. Does that make sense? Everybody got that? All right. So the next one is going to be speed, right, of it. So on the nervous system, the speed is going to be what? Really quick, right? In milliseconds. On the endocrine system, it's going to be what? Slowly. It's how slow? Well, it depends on the molecule, depends what it binds to on the bloodstream, but it can take seconds or it can take days. Or it may continue to what? For weeks. Have you ever taken a medication that says, okay, this you gotta take it every 8 hours? Have you taken other medication that says, okay, you need to take the medication every 12 hours? So twice a day, or 4 times a day, right? Have you ever taken a medication once a day? So it's every 24 hours. That means that this medication, right, this chemical is able to last as long and produce the effects in your body for that long period of time. Okay? That's what we're referring to. Now, area of effect. Nervous is really specific because it binds to a specific cell and or tissue, right? So it's one organ, so it's specific. The endocrine, on the other hand, we said that you release it from the brain and it has to go through the whole body, correct? So if there's any tissue or cell that has that receptor, that can cause an effect on the tissue and or cell. Everybody got it? So this one will be widespread through the whole body. So many organs. If you have any questions, please raise your hand. Don't be shy. So similar between nervous and endocrine. So what is the similarities? We just did what? Differences. Now, both hormones and neurotransmitters, like what? Norepinephrine, epinephrine, and dopamine. I'm going to talk about more in detail, but I believe in 2085, at least I went over dopamines, right? So both systems regulate by negative feedback control. So what is negative feedback? So positive and negative feedback. In able to maintain homeostasis, you have to do what? Homeostasis is maintained by both positive and negative feedback. What does that mean? So if somebody flips the paper backwards and I want to face forward, what do? Face it forward. But if somebody left to face it forward, what do? Well, leave it there. So that is a simplistic of what a positive or negative feedback is. In other words, if your blood pressure, let me just do a little example here. So if your blood pressure is high, what do you want it to be? Low? What do you want to be?
Have to be low.
How many of you would like to be your blood pressure low? How many of you would like to be high? How many of you would like to be something else? Something else? Whatever that is. What is something else? What is your normal blood pressure, guys?
120 over
110 over 70. That's the new one. Yeah, 120 already is every book, but 110 over 70, because the 120 nowadays is telling you that in the history, you're going to end up being hypertensive. But 110 over 70, that's what you want to be. 110 over 70, so you want to maintain your blood pressure somewhere around what? Around there. So if your blood pressure is high, let's say it's 180, right? Over, I don't know, 100. All right? You don't want to be low. Low is what? 80 over 10? You don't want to be low. You want to be where? NL, normal limit. Means, what is NL? Homeostasis. So, whenever your blood pressure is high, you stimulate a positive feedback, a negative feedback. What is a negative of a high number? What is a negative feedback? If something is high, what is the opposite of it?
low.
Low, but how low? Well, lower into what? Normal limits. So if your blood pressure is high, you want it to take it to normal limits. That's an example of negative feedback. So far, so good? If your blood pressure is low, what do you want to do? High, the opposite, right? What do you use, positive or negative feedback? You still do negative feedback. Negative feedback is always the opposite of what you already have. Just take my word for it, that's the way it works. So negative feedback is always the opposite of what you already have. If your blood pressure is high, what do you want to do it? Lower it to normal limits. If your blood pressure is low, what do you want it to do? Opposite. Increase it to normal limits. That's an example of negative feedback. Now, what's the difference between negative and positive? Well, positive only happens in few instances in life. And that is when you're about to give birth. Okay? So when you're about to give birth, you have a fetus in your uterus, and then that thing needs to come out, right? If not, well, then you're about to explode. You don't want the uterus to explode or to rupture. You know, if it gets too bigger, it would make it rupture. So, and then you have hemorrhage inside. So the oxytocin, which is a hormone, is released, and then it pushes the baby or the uterus all the way until the baby comes out. It hurts. And when it hurts, what happens? Does it stop? No, it keeps pushing until the baby comes out. So that's an example of positive feedback. Okay? Everybody got that? Okay. So now you have positive and negative feedback. So how do you regulate homeostasis? By what two mechanisms? Positive and negative feedback. Most of the events that we're going to talk about in the class is going to be what? Negative feedback. You got it. Okay? So both systems will continually regulate each other. Again, regulation of both positive and negative. So it's by actually either triggering hormones, secretion, or vice versa. At the end, you're going to target what? Something, either an organ or a cell, but there's something that you want out of those, which is binding to the receptor and allowing the neurotransmitters and or the hormone to do what? To make a response in the body. If you want your heart rate to increase, what do you release? Epinephrine. Whenever you are in a stress situation, your body releases adrenaline, right? And your heart rate increases. Imagine yourself throwing yourself out of 35,000 feet in the air, no parachute. Your epinephrine is going to go to the roof. Your heart rate will increase. We call that tachycardia. Your respiration will do what? Would you be just,
No.
you'd be like, right? So you increase your respiratory rate. We call that tachypnea. Okay? What about your sphincters?
No.
Do you think about pooping or urinating at the moment? Most likely, the moment you jump on a plane, yes. But then afterwards, it's so much stress that your sphincters do what? They tight up, right? When you're stressed, you can spend a whole day without urinating or defecating or eating for a full day, and you don't even remember. Or you didn't have the wanting to go to the bathroom or eating anything. Because there's so much stress, so much adrenaline rushing into your body that's the side effect of it. Okay? Awesome. So hormones, overall, what do? Regulate metabolic, whatever. So regulate metabolic functions of other cells. So they regulate. Hormones, they have lag time. So what is a lag time? The lagging time is the time that you release the hormone and the hormone takes effect. For example, I'm going to do an effect in one of you right now, okay? Just count. You get it? How long does it take me for me to touch her?
4 seconds.
Whatever, that's the lag time. Does that make sense? So there's a time that the hormone gets released, right? And then the time that the actual hormone does the effect. So that time in between is a lag time. The next one is going to be what? Tend to have a prolonged effect. So most of the hormones have a prolonged effect. We said it can be as fast as seconds, but most likely is what? Days, hours, days, or even weeks, right? The next one is they're classified as what? Well, hormones is pretty much what you eat. How do you build the hormones? You build hormones for the stuff that you eat. What do you eat? Well, me, I eat proteins, right? And then that's where amino acids come from. And then what else? Well, do you eat fat? You eat fats? Yeah, so that's where steroids come from. Lipids, right? And then acid-base hormones as well, okay? It's a mixture of acidic and basicity of those. But anyway, eicosanoids are special ones of the hormones. So eicosanoids are active what? Lipids. Eicosanoids are specific and they're active lipids. And they work, of course, locally. Okay? So some hormones can be inactive to the active form. At least, for example, the hormones in your stomach. Do you want your hormones in the stomach, all of them, to be active? Some hormones in the stomach allow you to degrade or break down proteins. If you break down the proteins, you're going to digest your whole stomach, and then the food's going to leak out, and then you're going to have what? Gastric juices eating up the intestines and the fats, and then there's like, yeah, you're going to lose weight. Yeah, you're going to be in the hospital. Right? So no. So inactive to active. So some hormones can be inactive to active. Anything that is inactive has the end of what? Ogen. Give me an example of ogen. Example would be pepsinogen. Let's say, for example, pepsin, ogen. Who cares what pepsin does? Right? But right now, all I'm telling you is like, whenever you see the word ogen, that means what? Inactive. So, some hormones, right, can be inactive, and then in the presence of something else, in this case, the acidity, this will become what? Activated. Okay? So far, so good? Okay. So, let's talk about the different classes of hormones, which we kind of did this already. So, what are the different classes? We got something that are built of amino acids, so anything that is protein-based is amino acid, right? Anything that is protein-based is also what? Peptide hormones. When you break down proteins, what is the smallest structure of a protein? Amino acids. How do you glue them together? Peptide bonds. So whether they say peptide bonds or amino acids, you know that comes from where? From a protein, something that you ate that contains protein, correct? So these amino acids or peptide hormones are insolubility in water. Are they what? Hydrophilic. So they love the water. So they dissolve within water. Now, on the classes of hormones, we have lipids. You guys ever seen a soup, right, with fat? And these mycelials of fat, or these lumps of fat, they always stayed on the top of the soup when you cool them down, right? And that's because the lipids are what? Hydrophobic. They do not dissolve in fat. Okay? So hormones, apart from having a structure, they also have, we have to look at the solubility in the water. Why are we doing this, and who cares about it? Think about it. Almost all the stuff that is in your blood is made out of what? Water. Because blood is 4 elements and plasma. So the majority of your blood is made out of water. You are mostly made out of what? Water. 65% you are made out of water. So we have to look at what these things do in the presence of water. Does that make sense? All right. Here it just shows you that you have a single amino acid, which is tyrosine, and you're able to make tyrosine. From tyrosine, you're able to make L-dopamine, dopamine, norepinephrine, or epinephrine. So listen, from a single amino acid, and just showing you this, amino acid derivatives right here on the top, you can make a series of different what? Hormones. You see it? Dopamine, norepinephrine, epinephrine, all that out of a single what? Series or groups of amino acids. Not one amino acid converted. So it is a multiple amino acids joined together. Okay. So, your thyroid gland. You guys, do you know where your thyroid is? Where's your thyroid gland? So your thyroid gland produces what? T3s and T4. And these tends to be what? Hydrophobic. Okay? Now, what about it? Who cares about it? Okay, here's it. We have a cell, right? Imagine this is a cell. Is the inside of the cell has water, yes or no? Yes. The cell membrane, what does it look like? What's the name of the cell membrane? Scoy. What is this portion called? What is this portion called? The cell membrane. Phospholipid bilayer. It has phosphorus and it has what? Lipids. That means that any hormone that is lipid based, right, is able to go through the cell into the nucleus and tell the cell what to do. In other words, the effect. So which are going to be faster? Things that are lipid based or things that are water based? Lipid based, they're going to act faster. So the effect on their body is going to take what? Less time. Everybody got that? All right. Then we also have your different type of catecholamines, but we're not spending a lot of time there. So the next one are peptide hormones. Well, we talk about peptides, right? Peptides is made out of proteins. Yeah? What, do we have time?
No.
We run out of time? All right. So for homework, do this ones. This. Learn them. Do adrenal and hypothalamus. Trust me. Learn this one. Take my word for it. If you do your homework, you will see the difference. Next class, it will be intense. Have a good one, guys.
Vamos a tener pagar otro acceso en Pearson para laboratorio.